Follow us on a journey as we embark on this adventure, discovering just how businesses in Essex have adjusted to these current testing times. With Brexit being on the cards for some time and the implications of a pandemic spreading worldwide, we welcome you to Business, Brexit and Beyond. New immigration rules are now in place. In this episode, we ask the questions: how will they affect the movement of talent between the EU and the UK? And what are the early signs like for recruitment in general?
Canfield Scott is a search and selection recruitment company based in the UK, but we do a lot of work across functional expertise of supply chain and operations. Anything to do with making products, moving products or buying products from a functional perspective. So here we are in the Canfield Scott offices at Thremel Park, just outside Stansted Airport. This is where all the magic happens. It's not very glamorous. In the recruitment game, you only need a laptop and a phone. You might notice that I have two phones there, one for the UK calls and one for the international dialing calls. This is where I spend the majority of my time. I spend my day trying to speak to as many people as I can on a daily basis, whether that's from a candidate side of people that are looking for jobs, or whether that's from the customer side of people that need me to help them find people for the jobs. We're cross-industry, we're focused on a variety of different industry verticals, so industrial manufacturing, consumer goods, and retail, and also pharmaceutical and chemicals. So my business is 2.5 years old now. We started in October 2018, following around 13 years working for other people. I created Canfield Scott, so I'm now currently the founder and managing director of Canfield Scott.
So here at PSHR on a daily basis, what we would generally do when we're in the office is come in, we'd catch up on our emails, chat to each other, find out what's going on day to day. For example, today's Friday, so we have our team meetings to find out where everyone's at with their targets, and we would talk about our clients and review what needs to be done for the week ahead. We've got lots of projects on the go, including working with different organisations in the region and targeting new ones to potentially work with in the future.
I think there were a lot of companies getting prepared for what Brexit meant to them as a business, and we could see that things were starting to move in the right direction, and companies were having to position themselves correctly to accommodate for the new Brexit rules and regulations and import and export of goods and services.
So as of the 31st of December 2020, there was a transition into Brexit. So what that means for employees in the UK who are from the EU is that they have to have either settled or pre-settled status to be able to continue to work in the UK. Now, if you were an EU resident and living in the UK for 5 years prior to the 31st of December 2020, you can apply for settled status under the EU settlement scheme.
There was a frantic rush in Q4 of 2020 in the last 3 months where companies were trying to navigate through the challenges that could come. So whether they were importing products, exporting products, or whether they needed to have specific trade deals in place with companies, or whether they needed to have presence in this country or have presence in other countries to support their customer demands. It was quite a frantic race towards the end of 2020 to get it done, and I've still heard now that there are still companies struggling with those regulations because they just reacted slightly too late.
It's quite tricky for employers to try and identify who has applied for and been successful with settled and pre-settled status. So the advice I would give to employers about this is to make sure that you identify those employees within your workforce who are from the EU. You run a bit of an audit across the board to find out whether they're UK citizens or EU citizens, or if they might need to have a visa come the 1st of July 2021. What you would need to do on the 1st of July is to make sure that you are checking whether these people have a status or not, because they will need that to be able to continue to work in the UK, otherwise they will need a visa.
Yeah, it's ever changing. there's not one rule fits all right now, and there's not one size that fits all, and we do see that companies are reacting a lot more aggressively now to how they need to be prepared for what regulations come with Brexit. But I understand that the UK government are very receptive to creating solutions around how Brexit can not be such a detrimental effect to some organisations.
So immigration rules have changed since the 1st of January this year. So whilst we are still under the transition for settled and pre-settled status to be achieved by some UK migrants up to the 30th of June, if you don't achieve that status, then you'll have to be able to have a visa to come and work in the UK, much like it has been for Australia and New Zealand and other countries. As a business, you would have to apply for a certificate of sponsorship, and you would have to be eligible to apply for that, and there's information about that again on uk.gov. But as a worker, you would need to have an offer of employment by a business who is entitled to sponsor EU migrants. You would need to achieve a certain level of points to be able to work in the UK, and that's currently 70 points. And you would also need to have a certain level of English as well.
Obviously, they're under a lot of pressure, so there's a lot of delay in getting the answers that companies need and individuals need to execute against their plans. But it is moving in the right direction. There's a delay on everything because there's new processes and new procedures, so it's not as easy as what it probably would have been if they would have been more prepared. I'm a firm believer that you should be looking at what you can gain rather than what you can lose. And I think for the country as a whole, I don't necessarily believe that we're going to be worse off by having slightly different restrictions on who can work in this country, because it gives more opportunity to the people that do have those necessary skills.
I think the sectors that will be affected most are sectors whereby you are employing already a lot of workers from the EU. So, for example, in haulage and logistics, a lot of HGV drivers come from Europe. So it's really important to ensure that they have their settled or pre-settled status, because you won't be able to get a visa for that kind of work. And then it will have a bigger impact for those companies where there are shortages, such as electronics technology, the healthcare sector, and you're able to boost your workforce with those employees from the EU by having your visa and your certificate of sponsorship set up. And it's really useful to have someone in-house to deal with all of that as well, someone who knows what they're doing. The shortages in the UK workforce that we've seen here recently are in the customs clearance and forwarding sector. In Suffolk and in Felixstowe particularly, where we have a lot of experience, there are lots of customs clearance agencies and forwarding companies who are looking for talented and experienced staff, and because of the changes to the laws with imports and exports, the specialisms are changing and the way people are working has changed, so it's increasing the amount of people that they need to have. I
do see that things are moving in the right direction, and we're definitely in a stronger position than where we were in 2020. But there's a long way to go. We took a big hit, the economy did, and there was huge challenges in 2020 for just business survival, let alone growth or taking a business into new streams. And I think I think we're on the right path. And every week, I would say that we're seeing some pockets of positivity happening, and there are certain industries that seem to be slightly buoyant than others, and certain skill sets are in slightly more demand than others. But as a whole, we are moving in the right direction.
The advice I would give to any SME looking to recruit from outside the UK would be, first of all, to understand what roles that you need to recruit for. It could be temporary, it could be permanent, and to do that you'd have to look at different sorts of sponsorship if you don't already have settled or pre-settled status employees. Certificates of sponsorship can be obtained online. There's a cost for them, and they range in different variants depending on who and what you would like to employ. And understand how you would attract those people. Make sure that the job role is interesting, that it details the salary that you have to pay for people outside of the UK. But mainly, I think advice would be to ensure that you know what your workforce currently is as well. So do an audit on your workforce, understand what you need to be checking on the 1st of July when you could potentially have people who are not legally able to work in the UK.
So I think it's going to be restrictive. It's more restrictive for people to come into the country and thrive in the UK economy and UK markets, but also on the flip side, for the UK population, it breeds so much more opportunity because effectively there's less competition for the roles that are out here, that are available. But you also have to ensure that you have the right skills and the right talent on board. And there's ongoing discussions as to how companies can still bring in talent from external, and I think it's still too early to say as to how detrimental that may be to the UK economy. But I know for sure that there's certain industries that are positioning themselves now in the UK and building facilities and having presence and having a corporate office here, which also helps create more opportunity and more employment for the UK market at the end of 2007, 8, 9. So there was a financial crash and all the industry seemed to bounce back. But now is a real time for people who have solid experience within change and transformation and restructuring and turnaround. That's what a lot of companies will be doing. So my advice to anybody in the job seeking community is that if you have these skills, or if you have experience working in these areas, then this is going to be a high demand skill set required in the coming months and coming years.
So businesses can do all of this themselves. They can apply online for certificates of sponsorship. They can get all of their processes together. They can look and understand what potential employees need to bring as proof of eligibility to work in the UK. But it is quite difficult for some people who are not used to it. So if any company is unsure, I would just recommend that they get in touch with HR or a local HR consultancy to help them with that, and they'll help them navigate through all the different things that they need to be compliant for.
If you'd like to find out more about trading with the EU, head over to our website at www.utas-essex.org for more information and resources.